On Monday, news of Zoleka Mandela's terrible demise was released. The cancer, which had already spread to numerous sections of the activist and author's body, was still present. So in this video, we will look into her life and career and some facts South Africans should know about her in this segment of Who Was Zoleka Mandela. Before we start, do subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Zoleka Mandela was born on the 9th of April in 1980. She was only 10 years old when Nelson Mandela was released from prison. Even though she only lived like a decade under the apartheid regime, she experienced so much. At the age of only 1 year old, she was smuggled to the island of Robben Island where her grandfather Nelson Mandela was being kept. She also remembers hiding her grandmother Winnie Mandela's hand grenade in a school bag so that she wouldn't be arrested. From the age of 4 until the age of 13 or so, Zoleka suffered from sexual and physical abuse from those who were meant to protect her, and she blamed her own mother for failing to protect her. But later in life, she said she's sure that her mother tried her best, but such events would haunt her till the day she died. According to Zoleka recounts of her earlier life, she experienced sexual abuse at a very early age. This abuse, she said, was at the hands of the men and women who were supposed to take care of her. As you may imagine, these times ruined her self-perception for the longest of time, and as a result of the abuse, which Zoleka said started as early as 4 years old, she started perceiving herself differently and loathed herself. And as is common amongst victims of such things, she blamed herself and ended up in a twisted and dark place. At the age of 9, Zoleka had her first alcoholic drink, and that's about the same age when she had her first so-called boyfriend at the age of 9. Then at the age of 13, Zoleka started smoking cigarettes and soon after that weed and ecstasy until she fell into the inescapable cocaine, which took nearly 10 years of her life. Soon after becoming a teenager, Zoleka was now very aware of a lot and was beginning to go through puberty and adolescence. It is here in her teenage years that her life took a turn for the worst as she caught on to a very bad addiction, cocaine. Not much information is public about how she got into it, however it was probably a result of hanging out with the wrong gang of kids. This addiction was soon to become a very big problem for her all the way to adulthood. But cocaine is not all that Zoleka was addicted to. She was also addicted to lovemaking and has admitted to it numerous times. In fact, she once joked about it in a radio interview that her lovemaking addiction led her to 6 children and still being single. She tried to work on dating for the right reasons, but at the end of the day, like her other addictions, when loneliness crept, she'd probably relapse and find herself with another guy in bed. And it's important to know that victims of sexual violence are very likely to get addicted to the very thing they were violated with, since it feels very familiar to them and somehow feeling like they'll numb their way to healing. And as much Zoleka admitted, saying her overindulgence in lovemaking was because she was trying to numb the pain. Now, in 1997, her firstborn child Zenani was born. Zoleka was at least 17 years old at the time. As we have aforementioned, she was overindulgent in lovemaking due to her abusive childhood. This child was, according to Zoleka, the reason she changed her ways, even though she regretted the circumstances. In 2002, when she was 23, she gave birth to her second-born Zinawe. In 2010, at the age of 30, something that changed her life forever changed. Zoleka had attempted to take her own life, but this wasn't a first thought. She had struggled with such thoughts from an early age of 13 years old or earlier, but this time she had tried and nearly succeeded and was hospitalized as a result. As a result of this, she had spent nearly 10 days without seeing her daughter as she was on drugs prior to her hospitalization. But her week was about to change for the worst. Her mother's sister Zenani had a new man in her life, and that man's son was tasked with driving Zoleka's daughter Zenani from a football event during the Soccer World Cup of 2010, but the guy was drunk, and in a single driver accident on a road which was meandering, he lost control, and in the accident, Zoleka's 13-year-old daughter was killed. It was few hours after her birthday. She had just turned 13, a fatal blow to Zoleka, who had attempted to leave this world by choice. It's at this point that she questioned the importance of life, wishing it was her instead. But that was not going to happen. She felt selfish for trying to end her life and wished her daughter was alive and she dead instead. From here on, she decided to quit alcohol and cocaine at the age of 30. She went to rehab and sought help. She was doing this for her daughter and her surviving children. She even went on to start a foundation for awareness on drunk driving, road safety, breast cancer, and sexual violence. At this point, she had finally seen a reason to leave and hoped her daughter would forgive her wherever she might have been. The man who was driving the vehicle was tried but later acquitted of the charges. While it may seem like life was starting to improve for Zoleka, another tragedy was soon to hit her at the age of 31. Just a year after losing her daughter, she got pregnant, and in the same month she lost her daughter. A year prior, she lost her son days after he was born prematurely. But even then, life was not through with her. As a year later, in 2012, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and initially she didn't want to get treatment but realized she had to fight for her kids. She had so much to live for and underwent the treatment and even documented it. And it was after the cancer that she included this in her foundation to raise awareness on it. She overcame the cancer, but it wasn't done with her. It came back years later in 2016 and was very aggressive. This time it had metastasized to other parts of the body, including her lungs, liver, brain, and bones. There was no way of beating it this time, and Zoleka was forced to give in to the fate and spend her time documenting her life. In the progression of her cancer, she lost her grandmother, Winnie Mandela, whom she claimed was very close to her, and her death hit very hard as she had been very supportive of Zoleka and loved her unconditionally in her dark days. Moreover, Zoleka also lost her mother, and after years battling the cancer, in her final days, she had gotten fond of life. And from a person who's had suicidal thoughts from the age of 13, she no longer wanted to die. In an interview, she was quoted saying, "I am dying and I don't want to die." This was a few months before she died on Monday the 25th of September 2023, surrounded by friends and family. Zoleka's story is to be reckoned with, as it shows how even the granddaughter of the great Nelson Mandela could go through the worst of things and suffer the common fate most young girls suffer at the hands of their caregivers, to the shared problems of drugs and alcohol and overindulgence which result when a child has gone through so much abuse so early on in life. Her story may seem like a tragedy from start to end, but it teaches us how all of us can get up and overcome regardless of our past and what happened to us. She wrote her book Whispers of Hope while she had cancer and did much good later in her life. Her only regret was her upside came after her grandfather had died, and hoped that wherever he is, he would be proud of who she has become. What did you learn from Zoleka? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content like this.